Hi there, everybody. Welcome to another album review. My name is Christian Eschbach. All right, everybody. It's time to do a little Frank Zappa. It's been a while. Today we are talking about the Grand Wazoo. Okay, so before I get into the album, because the album only has 5 tracks, so there isn't a lot, and most of them instrumental, so there's only so much to talk about without playing any music. So let's do this. Here's the full open up Grand Wazoo there. That's really cool. You got that there. Yeah, that's really cool. You'll see this big write-up on this side. Alright, so this big write-up on this side is the legend of Cletus Aretus Auritus and the Grand Wazoo. I read through it once, and that was enough. Zappa has this great way of telling stories when you watch him live and whatnot, that is really great to listen to, like the wording that he's using and whatnot. Kind of like Dennis Miller that way. You don't necessarily, some people are going to really enjoy reading what Dennis Miller has to write, but for the most part, he's only fun if you kind of listen to him. Because of the rants they go off on. Now, the difference between Zappa and Dennis Miller is Dennis Miller uses historical referencing. Zappa goes into his own little universe with what he does and his own little stories, and they get very surrealistic is the best way I can look at it, and it makes it for a complicated read. I've read a lot of, and this is really funny where I'll say this, I've read a lot of surrealist stuff, and I find surrealist stuff can get a little crazy, a little heady, and you gotta kind of read it slowly. You can't power through it like you would with normal reading, like a novel or whatever. And I think it's really funny because I, with my poetry, tend to be very surrealist and whatnot. And if you're ever interested in that, you can check out the links down below. One of them will take you over to where you can find some of my words, whether they be lyrics or whether they be poems. Not an ad for myself, though. Where I'm going with this is the write-up gives you an idea of the story that's being conveyed through the music in this album, but I, don't think it's necessary. If you take the music completely at face value on its own, it is wonderful. This album itself, with the exception of, this is going to sound weird, with the exception of 2 out of 5 songs, this album is really, really good. The other 2 songs kind of, I think, bring it down a little, but let me explain. The very first song on this album, The Grand Wazoo, is 13 minutes and 19 seconds. So when I'm looking at this on here, I did not check this up online, but when I'm looking at it on here, it's probably 2 tracks on the one side, 3 tracks on the other on the original vinyl. But Grand Wazoo would suck up most of the first side of the album. And it's really great instrumental piece. This one, okay, so I don't have, what's the original release date here? 73 on the back, it says here. So there are elements in here you definitely recognize in later Zappa albums, even some that you could have heard in some Zappa albums around this time. This was labeled as Zappa album number 16. So in this time period, there were definitely a lot of similar elements and whatnot, and Zappa was known for recycling his own stuff. That was part of what he did, was, he'd take a solo from this live show, and then he'd extrapolate off that and heard another one, or he'd flip it around and have it play backwards or whatnot, crazy stuff like that. And, as a producer, I've learned a lot from Zappa that way when it comes to putting together songs and playing with them and getting into that real artistry side of it. And Grand Wazoo sets this album up, letting you know that's exactly the experience that you're in for on this one. Then we go into For Calvin and his next two hitchhikers. This one is the only one that's got lyrics. It's interesting. I don't mind it, but compared to a lot of Frank's other stuff, this one doesn't do too much for me. It doesn't have that. It doesn't have that satirical bite that I like. It really doesn't have that whimsicalness to it. I don't feel like it's sort of there, but it's not really there. It's kind of feels a little forced, maybe. I don't know. I think Frank was on to something and he was headed for something. And I've heard that this album, I think, may have gotten forced out early. I don't know. Or Frank was never happy with this album. I read something on it a long time ago. I don't remember what it was, though. And it was only a small blurb. But I'm gonna say that this particular song feels like it was meant to be in the middle of an actual story, not in the middle of a bunch of tracks. And that's just For Calvin. If you took For Calvin out of here, the rest of the album would be a really tight instrumental album and really cool that way. And I think maybe that might have been the better route to go. Hold For Calvin off and maybe put it into another album. Then you got Cletus, Aretus, Alrightus. This one is the shortest song on the album, clocks in at 2 minutes and 56 seconds. This one is the one track on this album where, when it's playing, okay, sure, no problem, I guess. It is probably, to me, the weakest track on the album. It does the least for me. And then we go into Eat That Question, which I think is great. Mwah. Cherry of the Frank Zappa instrumental stuff. Really, really dig on this one. Eat That Question, probably, if I was putting together a Zappa instrumental album, that one would go on there right with Watermelon and Easter Hay. I believe that's the one I'm trying to think of. This is a really top-notch quality instrumental track. Absolutely love Eat That Question. And then the album finishes off with Blessed Relief, which comes up 1 second short of 8 minutes. Blessed Relief is a great instrumental track as well. Because of how much Frank I've already listened to, like if I were listening to these albums as they had actually come out, I would probably enjoy Blessed Relief a lot more than I do. But because, like for me, this was album, I don't know, 15, 16, which is funny considering, it's 16. But due to all that, and I had heard so much other Frank, and a lot of it came after this. So the elements in this that I recognize and make me kind of go, oh, Blessed Relief is just kind of a recycler. It's the later stuff that's actually more the recycler, but because I experienced the later stuff first, this feels more like the recycle for me. Would I recommend the Grand Wazoo? Yeah. I actually really wish I had picked this album up sooner now that I've, really given it some time, really listened to it. The instrumentation on this album is just fantastic. Just brilliant. I love where is it here? I really hate how they did the notes on the inside here. Yeah, the brass section with Sal Marquez on Eat That Question is fantastic. Sal Marquez does the brass on Blessed Relief, on Eat That Question. And I'm going to go with those two because that's really where I was really enjoying the brass work. The whole way around, this album's got some, like, crazy jazz influence on it too. I really like. I was hearing parts in this album that were reminding me of Alice Cooper's "School's Out" album, specifically like "Blue Turk," and coincidentally would have been released kind of right before this. So I'm not sure how that worked out. I think it's a brilliant album. It really is. You really got to pick this up, get into it, take the time, read the notes here and whatnot, see how many different people went into the work on this. The story on the inside, that's read at your own risk, as far as I'm concerned. The artwork is fantastic as well. I really do love the artwork on this one. Yeah, I'm going to leave it at that, folks. Drop me a line down below in the comments. Let me know what you think. Am I being too hard on this album? Am I not being hard enough on this album? Am I, shortchanging the story on the inside? I know I am. Let me know, though. That's what the comment section is for, Let other people know as well. Hit the like button, the subscribe button, the bell for notifications. That helps out me, you, and everything like that. Please and thank you. Also, there are a couple links down below. Check those out. Otherwise, folks, peace, love, take care.